And, it's just a matter of cultural accident. When Cortez sailed into the Bay of Campeche, the difference between medieval Spanish civilization and the civilization of the Aztecs in terms of technological level and understanding, they were practically on a par. I mean, the Spanish had no antibiotics, they had no advanced weaponry, no advanced communication, they had better ships, but had the voyage not been done that way, 150 years later, the Aztecs might have landed on the coast of Spain and claimed it for Montezuma's successor. That's how nearly in parallel they were. But then, of course, the bifurcation was tremendous. One civilization wiped out, and the other, through the looting of the former, finances its way into modern science, and 500 years later we have atom bombs and antibiotics and DNA sequencing. Anyway, that's it for this evening. Thank you for your attention and your indulgence. I'm very grateful to you. I dare to hope, having deconditioned myself from my Catholic childhood and gone through existentialism and all that, now I dare to hope that maybe there is some kind of existence beyond the grave. Well, first of all, let me say I don't know, but then here's what I think. The model that I've always carried in my head is of a target, like a bullseye. And at the center of the bullseye is the dimethyltryptamine high-dose experience, which, even though I've spent my whole career raving about how strange it is, I always hit low. I mean, it is beyond description. Language fails. Your language, my language, everybody's language. And as you move out from that, maybe the next circle out is high-dose ayahuasca followed by high-dose psilocybin, or maybe those two are reversed. And then further out, LSD. And then further out, things like 2CB. And then yet further out, things like ecstasy. And what's leaving the picture are, first of all, intense three-dimensional hallucinations, then intense two-dimensional hallucinations, and the more exotic transformations of the mental state. But I have the feeling that we're always aiming for the center of this mandala. Somebody else might have a different model of consciousness. Roland Fisher had a toroidal model and various states of arousal. But to my mind, if you raise the dose of any psychedelic, it becomes more and more like DMT. You have to take over 500 micrograms of LSD for it to be like DMT. Very few people these days do that much acid because it brings a lot of physical stuff with it. Ayahuasca at moderate doses is the classical hallucinogen of Amazonian shamanism that you've all read about. But double that dose, and it becomes indistinguishable from DMT. Same with psilocybin. If a 5-gram trip is a classic psilocybin trip, an 8-gram trip is like a DMT trip. So now some people are saying of alpha-salvinorin that it's much stronger than DMT. It's much more frightening and bizarre. Just to save my sanity, I choose not to believe that. Because I've been saying for years, if there's something stronger than that, I don't want to know about it. Because that definitely pushed me as far as I wanted to go. My son, I think, has more experience with all of this than anybody else I know. And I said to him, where would you put it? And he said, it's almost as strong as DMT. And so it's sort of like that. But then over this set of values and comparisons I've just made, you have to overlay the fact that like your blue eyes, your height, your body weight, your intelligence, and everything else about you that makes you unique, your inherited allotment of drug synapses is unique. And this is why some people are sensitive to drugs, some people insensitive, some people extremely sensitive. And one of the things about exploring consciousness with substances is you have to sort of learn what works for you. You may have gotten the idea from hanging out with the wrong people that the way you explore drugs is by doing as many as possible and in as many combinations as possible. I couldn't do that. I have never done that, and I can't do that. My body just can't take it. If I want a more intense drug experience, I take more of one drug. But part of exploring this area is to learn what works for you. For example, the most dramatic and easy to understand example, I think, is cannabis. Most people, after a preliminary brush with cannabis, which may last years, tend to decide that it somehow interferes or that they have memory problems or feelings of social paranoia and abandon it. Some small percentage of people experience no short-term memory loss and basically can't live without it. I speak from first-hand knowledge of this condition. So learning what works for you is very important, and then push that to its limits. What fascinates me, I'll just unload my personal opinion on you, are the tryptamine hallucinogens. I always found LSD too, what I call abrasively psychoanalytical. I don't want to endlessly reflect on my childhood upbringing and whether I'm a good or a bad person. I mean, I'll do a little bit of that, but I think I got that under control. I'm not interested in myself in quite the way some people are interested in themselves. What I'm interested in, and what's always been the holy grail for me, are visual hallucinations. And people have said you're a nut on this subject. But the reason I'm so into visual hallucinations is because when I'm seeing something that I could not previously have even imagined, then I am completely convinced I'm in the presence of an other, because I couldn't think that up, and yet I'm looking at it. Low doses of psychedelics or moderate doses of psychedelics transform the quality of thought. You think faster, think deeper, think odder, think broader, but you need more for that to burst through into hallucination. And that always has fascinated me it's just, I guess, in my personality. I was thinking some months ago about the books that have really influenced me in my life, and, we try to make a respectable list that makes us seem profound. So, Moby Dick, Finnegan's Wake, Whitehead, say, okay, that's the public list. What are the real books? Well, Bartholomew Cubbins and the 500 Hats, that was a biggie. But a really important book for me was a little book that Aldous Huxley wrote almost as a throwaway. I'm sure he barely gave it a thought. It's a book called The Art of Seeing. Seeing. And it basically, the message of this book can be given in one sentence. Pay attention to what your eyes are telling you.